How's it going, ladies and gents, subscribers of Are You Taking the Nick? Today I'm back with another tutorial video, and today I'm going to be focusing specifically on the Heath Ledger Joker impressions video. Now obviously there have been many interpretations of this person's voice, the Joker, this character, for example Mark Hamill and Jack Nicholson, but I'm going to be focusing on Heath Ledger's impression, which I think is the best. I think it's the most convincing and he plays the part the best in my opinion. Now I'll put a link in the description below or up here somewhere about my Joker impressions video, which I recently did, and many of you like that. It's nearly got 100 likes now, which is fantastic, so thanks very much. But I'm going to break this down into 3 easy steps into how to do the voice, how to do the laughter, and how to do the mannerisms of the Joker himself. So let's start off with the voice. Now step 1, what you've got to try and have is to produce this dark, raspy sounding voice. So for example, the Joker says things like, "Let's not blow things out of proportion." And there, you're using quite a difficult, dark-sounding voice with a little bit of that deepness in the back of your throat. Now, how do I do that? Well, what I do is I like to let my mouth and my jaw go completely loose. And then, what I do is I apply all the tension to the back of my throat. I do this with a lot of my impressions, for example, Gollum and Smeagol, and this is how I do it. And that brings me on to step 2, which complements step 1. And step 2 is to add a little bit of husk to your voice. Now that is quite easily demonstrated by quotes such as, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen." You can see there a little bit of husk is coming out the back of the voice. And obviously this would be easier if I had a microphone in front of me, you'd be able to hear every octave of my voice. But that's how it's produced. And now to produce that, again, you use the back of your throat. You really dig into the back of your throat. And the best example of probably where you would let your jaw go completely relaxed, completely slack, and you use the back of your throat is, "Why so serious?" You hear there, I'm just sort of letting my jaw just sort of do that and waggle around, move, not really do much, but it's the back of my throat that's producing that sound. You can really hear that there. Now step 3, which I think is the most important step for doing this, is to add a sense of nasal sound to this voice. And this is different to steps 1 and 2, and this is what really does make the Joker unique, Heath Ledger's version unique. So an example would be, "Oh, you look nervous, is it the scars? You want to know how I got them?" So just using a little bit of nasal there, so you're really digging up into your nasal cavities and using those. And again, it makes this dark sounding side seem a lot sort of different, and it really adds to the dynamics and the variations in his voice. So one way I suggest you do this is to hold on to the last syllables of the word the Joker speaks. So for example, "I'm a dog chasing cars." He really cars, sort of drags on that word to sort of use the nasal part of that voice, of that sound. Or maybe, "Oh, you are beautiful." Like that sort of leaving that last syllable to drag on a little bit sort of adds with the nose and the sound of the deep, raspy sounding voice to really go really well together. Now let's talk about the laughter. Now, this isn't something I tend to focus on so much. The laughter for me is less important with Heath Ledger. For example, with Mark Hamill, he uses that a lot more. The laughter there was really important with the Joker impression, but Heath Ledger, the unique and special qualities of his characteristics of the Joker is he doesn't laugh as much. But when he does laugh, it's very spontaneous, very random, and it's sort of uncontrollable force. So that's what I'm going to try and teach you now. So first step, when you're doing the laugh, it's got to be kind of a winded sounding laugh. It's almost like a schizophrenic maniac, just sort of going and you sort of, if you hit your abdomen, you should be able to produce this sound. It's sort of like you're a winded sort of cat, you know, you've been hit in the stomach by a football or whatever, soccer ball to those who subscribe to me in the US. That is how you produce that sound. I like to follow the hoo-ha formula. So when you hear the Joker's laughter, it's almost like that sort of sound that comes out. And he can just continue it for a long time and then he starts to speak after that. But that is step 2. Which is the important part of step 2 now, is that he can just break away from normal sounding verse and just suddenly go into sort of laughter. That is the spontaneity of the Joker. He's got such a random laughter, he just sort of breaks into fits of laughter. But that's all part of the character. The character himself, he has this sort of personal hatred for the world and just believes in chaos and death and destruction. And so that, when you associate words like when Batman says, "Then why'd you want to kill me?" He loves it. He goes, "I don't want to kill you." And he sort of bursts into his laughter, that hoo-ha formula laughter, which I was saying. So this is how, a little analogy I like to describe the Joker as. His laughter is a little bit like a musical instrument. It can be very varied. It can be, on the one hand, quite ominous, quite intimidating and frightful, but on the other hand, it can be quite a cheerful sounding laughter, one that sort of he thinks brings joy and excitement. It's very excitable laugh, so remember to make it random. Just be talking randomly in the Joker's voice, and just sort of that, that sort of laughter that comes out. Now, third step into all of doing the overall Joker impression is the mannerisms. Now, a lot of impressionists forget this. They seem to let this go whisk quite clearly over the edge, but I think that the mannerisms is really important when doing the Joker impression. So the first obvious one is the licking of the lips. He does that a lot, and that's all part of the dark and psychotic characteristics of the Joker. Sort of, well, you are beautiful. That sort of thing. Another thing which he does a lot of is the brushing of the hair, just that light sort of brush, that sort of brush thing. And just by doing that, you're already adding to the characteristics of the Joker. You're already adding to this dark satire, and it will just help you fill out the persona of the Joker himself. And the final one, which very few people seem to do, is, for me, the turning or the bobbing of the head. So, for example, when he comes in, he says something like, "Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We are," and he sort of moves his head around a little bit. It's not a very big movement, but it is a significant one, and it's, for me, the Joker sort of movement reminds me sort of a paranormal thing, like a ghost. It's almost kind of sliding around. It's not very normal, and that's all part of the Joker's persona, so it's important to get those mannerisms correct. So the final thing I would suggest to really connect with the impression is to get the makeup on. Go all out with it. I did in my last video, although I didn't do it very well. But there's many tutorials out there how to do the Joker makeup, so check those out. Do that. I can't suggest anything to you. I'm not a makeup artist myself. But it really does the impression justice. And also when you're doing the impression, remember to learn your quote, learn your key phrases, because if you don't sound like the Joker, it's impossible to just pick up random lines and sort of say,